which is why we can't predict how this is going to go. Jeff Bennett at the White House, thank you. Let me bring in Dr. Tom Inglesby. He's the director of the Center for Health Security at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. He's an expert in pandemics and emerging infectious diseases and has advised the CDC. He says the issue isn't stopping the spread of the coronavirus, it's how to blunt the impact of it. Dr. Inglesby, thank you for coming on and sort of trying to separate fact from myth here. First of all, what do you want to hear from the president and the public health officials in an hour?
Well, I want the officials on stage, the president and his health officials, to be as clear as CDC was yesterday morning when they said that they believe this epidemic is likely to spread in the United States. I think that's really important because it will help galvanize preparedness actions. I think institutions like hospitals, to some extent, are waiting for cues from national leaders about what they should be doing. And those kinds of clear messages that they were giving out yesterday morning about how it's time to prepare, that's going to be really important. I also hope we hear an announcement of pretty substantial funding support, because we're going to need that for hospitals, for public health agencies.
What do you need right now? What would Johns Hopkins need right now in Baltimore?
I think they're going to need some kind of assurance about supply chains around personal protective equipment, masks and gowns, that those will keep coming to hospitals over time, that the government's doing everything it can do to try and ensure supply chains along those lines. They need to be hearing about funding support over time. These patients that have been hospitalized in China have been there are hospitalized for a very long time, and hospitals are operating way out of their comfort zone, so it's going to be pretty expensive and complicated for hospitals to care for coronavirus patients.
Yeah.
And I think they're going to want to be hearing about, when are we going to get diagnostic testing available for clinics and hospitals? Right now, in our country, we've tested somewhere in the order of 500 people for coronavirus, and in other countries, we've tested tens of thousands. So we need to pick up the pace on diagnostic testing, get our clinical developers creating these lab tests so doctors and nurses can test right on the site.
So last night, I surprised my teenager when I told him that only 2% of those that get this coronavirus die. He goes, "Oh, well, I thought it was much worse." And I understand, if you just digest social media, you just digest the headlines, this feels more deadly than it is. Now, at the same time, we need to take it seriously. So give me the don't panic but take it seriously analysis for us, please.
Well, just as a point of comparison, seasonal flu every year has a case fatality rate of about 1 in 1,000. And so this disease, at this point in China, has been killing about between 1 and 2 or 3 in 100. So that's a pretty serious distinction between the two. It's also a new disease that we're learning a lot about. So the case fatality rate may go down, it may go up. We're still learning a lot about it over time. And it's a new disease, so more people around the world are vulnerable to it. We have more immunity as a group to influenza, but more people are susceptible to getting coronavirus. So those are the reasons why I think we all need to take it seriously. It is the case that most people who get this disease will do very well and have minimal symptoms, but there are some, and in China, it's something on the order of about 5% of people had to be in the intensive care unit on ventilators. And some of those people, about half those people, died from that.
I was just going to say, if you have an asthma condition, if you're older, is this the highest vulnerability group?
Yeah, I mean, the highest vulnerability is in people over 60, particularly as they get older into the 70s and 80s. Those people are at higher risk. And people who have pre-existing conditions like diabetes or lung disease or cancer seem to be at higher risk.
Dr. Tom Inglesby with a fact-based interview here. Nothing to ramp you up or ramp you down. Take this seriously is clearly the message we are receiving. Doctor, thanks very much. We'll be right back as the president gets ready to speak to the nation about the nation's coronavirus response. Stick around.
At BMW, we didn't make
Because this.gov.
Come on.
She tried to win.
Democrat Trump and to combat climate change.
Chaos to
Out Carol.
How many commercials are they going to have?
We have some breaking news out of Milwaukee, where police are on the scene at the Miller Coors headquarters following a deadly workplace shooting. The mayor, Tom Barrett, just confirmed that multiple people were killed, including the gunman. Police say there is no longer an active threat, but it is still an active investigation at this campus of Miller Coors. A senior police official tells NBC News the gunman was an employee who was recently fired from that facility. We're going to continue to monitor this tragic story, bring you any developments as we get it, and we'll be right back.
You should be mad at tech that's
More commercials. What's up with the commercials? Feeding them all in there at once, I guess.
Chemical dependence.
Somebody's got to pay these guys to stand on the air.
With administration officials are scheduled to brief reporters at the White House on the coronavirus. Betsy, Michael, and Donna are all back. Betsy, this feels like, the president has made it known he's upset at the markets, reaction to all this. So his motivation is that, but this may be one of those cases where he's stumbling into finally doing something that the administration probably should have done a month ago.
I think having public health figures address this pandemic and share information, assuming it's correct, it's a no-brainer that you should do that. The issue here is that we don't know what he's going to say. And in the past, he's taken at least one infamous disaster situation and doctored it for his own political benefit. When the hurricane hit Florida, Trump claimed that Alabama was in the pathway, and they put out this ridiculous Sharpie map. We'll see.
This is the credibility thing. He has so little credibility with at least half the country that when in a moment like this is where not having that credibility is a problem.
And this is a place where his desire to be the bride at every wedding and the corpse at every funeral may work against him. You want a guy in a white lab coat talking about this.
I don't need the germaphobe.
Right. No,
and frankly, I don't think the stock markets are going to be particularly calmed or impacted by anything Trump says about this. Wall Street doesn't think it's credible.
The and to that is that you've already basically undercut all of the infrastructure, that public health infrastructure that needs to be in place and needed to be in place a month ago in order to deal with the looming crisis. And he's got nobody who's home at the store.
It does seem as if this is how all politics is local. Republicans aren't going to have his back on this, are they? Because this stuff crosses party lines.
They're already talking about the need for a larger supplemental appropriation on Capitol Hill. Even Republicans are talking about
the answer to everything is always more money.
More money.
I got a question. If they're taking this seriously, in which they should be, they absolutely should be taking this serious. And there is a fine line in being able to walk and not knowing if it's an overkill to the point that you're creating too much anxiety, too much concern, too much panic, versus not enough concern, not enough cautiousness. There is a tight wire here to have to walk here. And I agree with that, but at the same time, it should be looked upon with the utmost concern of it being crucial, especially whenever we have seen the tattletale signs of what has occurred in other parts of the world. Be it as it may, the question is, the million-dollar question, how come this president, out of all the other world leaders that has looked upon the global environmental changes the way that the other national leaders have looked at global warming, how come this president refuses to acknowledge global warming in the same type of atmosphere? That is the $64,000 question. Whenever you have all these people that are telling you this, and you got one oddball that's telling you that, you have to start scratching your head a little bit towards what's really going on with this guy. You know, is he really out to help us? Or is he out to hurt us? I mean, the whole primary purpose for the president being the president, that we pay him to be the president, is to protect us. Protect us from foreign as well as domestic threats. And those threats can come in the form of A to Z. From the biggest to the biggest pertaining to a planetary alignment or solar flares, to the smallest of the smallest pertaining to a microscopic germ a trillionth the size of a human being. So one has to stop and ask themselves the simple question, what is really going on with our chief and commander whenever all these tattletale signs keep popping up, and just like the woman said, there's nobody manning the store? What's happening here with our chief and commander? And it's one thing for it to be propaganda. I'm going to use that word, propaganda, in the sense that it's a political stunt towards I was right and you was wrong. Okay? We have been exposed to propaganda here in America probably since the Nixon era, in some form or fashion, of either being lied to or lied about or not told the truth pertaining to hidden secrets, pertaining to mass cover-ups in some form or fashion. So we're accustomed to that. That's really not gonna upset the apple cart due to the fact that we've already become accustomed to that. We've become callous to that. But whenever you have something as serious as a microscopic biological germ, and whenever you have something so serious pertaining to global warming, after you've had all these people that has given you all this data, all this information, and the president is still in denial about these things, one has to ask the simple question, what is really going on with our chief and commander? And I wish the guy the best. I promise you, I really do. I'm not biased against the guy. I could care less whether or not he was a Republican or a Democrat. The fact of the matter is, he has got a job to do. And whenever he's lax in doing that job, then is whenever people like myself become concerned and start questioning what is his true interior motives here. Why hasn't he been as prone to accept the facts of them being the facts as everybody else is? Has he got some sort of a main line with God? Is he tapped into a different resource that everybody else isn't tapped into? One has to start asking the simple question, what is going on with our president? And that's the point that I'm trying to make in regard to the seriousness of this, because it is serious. Whenever you see, I mean, I was told last night, I don't forget now what news agency it was on. I think it was on up in the Christian channels, where this guy was talking about the fall of the collapse of the economy worldwide on a global scale because of the coronavirus. And he was also talking about how that he felt like, or certain people felt like, that China had exposed this deadly disease over in their country because of all the protesting towards being able to control their people. And then he brought up another gesture, that the incinerators over in China has been running 24/7 towards burning carcasses. Because over there, I don't think that they actually bury people. I think they exterminate everybody pertaining to having them basically done away with. They don't conduct funeral services like we do ordinarily over here. That the ovens has been on 24/7. And that is a frightful, scary thought. And the people that I was listening to last night, like I said, it was in the range of the Christian channel range somewhere, also brought up the fact that if the truth be known, we probably are not, or have not been exposed to less than 50% of the truth towards how serious that it actually was or is, and possibly even still is over in China. Which, you know, from one country to another, towards one country lying or not telling the whole truth, once more, that's common practices. That can be expected from one country to another. That, yeah, we got problems, but they're not that severe problems. Of course, now in today's technology world that we live in, with all these social media platforms, it's almost virtually impossible for the rest of the world not to know what's going on in a particular country, because there's so much information now that escaping from that crisis, somebody eventually will find out the truth towards what is actually happening, regardless of how secretive that they may be. It's one thing for one country to do that to all the other countries in their own personal defense, which is understandable. But we should not have a president of the United States that's basically trying to bamboozle or downsize the seriousness of something, knowing that it is as serious as the rest of the people is talking about. That's the part that I'm trying to get at. We should not have somebody that's sitting in our seat towards our chief, our commander, our president, that is intentionally misguiding or intentionally holding back the truth of something that is so serious in these regards, regardless whether it's a microscopic germ or it's pertaining to global warming. And I think anybody that hears this will probably agree with me, because once more, we don't hire people to protect us so that they can't protect us. We hire them to protect us because we feel like that is their job. And if they can't protect us, let's say that there was a planetary alignment. Let's say there was a meteor on the way directly to hit the planet Earth, and there was no escaping it. NASA knew it. All the other people knew it that's associated with outer space. They know that they're not going to be able to stop it. I'm using this as a metaphor. Let's say the thing was the size of Texas, knowing that whenever it hits the planet Earth, it's probably going to knock us plumb out of our planetary alignment. Much less all the other damages that it's going to occur as far as massive earthquakes and volcanoes and the dust and the soot that's going to go up into the atmosphere. But let's say they know about these things. They're fully aware that this is fixing to happen within the next 72 hours. And they know they're not going to be able to stop it. It's impossible to stop. Does the American people and does the world have the right of knowing that these occurrences are fixing to happen so that they can get proper affairs in order pertaining to fixing to have to leave this world and go to the next world? I think we do have that right. I think we have that right, that we should be foretold ahead of time, knowing what is around the corner. That way we do not get blindsided by whatever's fixing to hit us, regardless whether it be a meteor or a microscopic germ or global warming. I think people can follow what I'm trying to say here. That if you can't protect us, at least give us a heads up. That way we won't get blindsided and we wind up in a place where we really don't want to go. Those that are trying to get to heaven by the skin of their teeth. I personally ain't going to live that way. That's the reason why people denounce me, or not denounce, but people announce me as me being a fanatic. Because I want to maintain my walk with God on a day-to-day level, in prayer, and in relationship with the Heavenly Father, even at the expense of people characterizing me towards me being a fanatic. That's fine. If they want to characterize me as me being a fanatic, then so be it. No, it's not the most pleasantest thing in the world to have to deal with a bunch of cruel, insensitive, barbaric, people that's treating you this way. But at the same time, I feel like that's my assurance towards knowing that if something happens to me, I'm prayed up, packed up, and ready to go up. And that's the way, as far as I'm concerned, everybody should be living. Of course, we know that that's not the case.
Because that's what they can do. They can't reorganize the CDC or the NIH or anything like that, or put new people in charge, or create a czar position, or create some sort of internal cohesion in the White House. So the Health and Human Services Secretary is saying the same thing as the economic advisors.
Well, that is the issue. I mean, there is no coordination in the brain. I mean,
why is
ordinarily
Larry Kudlow announcing anything about the containment of this virus?
Because they seem to be more concerned about the markets than they are about containing the virus.
Part of the challenge when it comes to the strategy of...
Exactly. They see the markets being torn apart. And because the markets are being torn apart, in actuality, that has brought more concern than it has the human death toll. Exactly. They nailed it on the head. In other words, if we had not seen the stock market do what the stock market has done in the past 2 days, I don't know what it's doing today, we probably wouldn't even be having this presidential coronavirus briefing that's fixing to happen with the White House here in America, if it didn't affect the stock market the way that it did in the past 2 days. Like I said, I don't know what it's done today, but I'm pretty sure it's going to have some sort of a negative effect. Hopefully it won't be as bad as what it was the past 2 days, but they nailed it. They nailed it right on the head.
Throwing money at this problem, which I think everyone on the Hill...
Of course, if you really get to looking at it, what actually caused the 1929 Depression? Fear. Panic. When everybody felt like that their money was in jeopardy, everybody went out and pulled all their money out of the banks. And there was no guardrails in regard to how much money could be pulled or yanked out of the market in one day. And that's basically what drove the market into a state of bankruptcy, was fear, panic. That's what put the United States in the Great Depression in 1929. Of course, the vast majority of the people that was down in the South was poorer than dirt, and whenever it all occurred, they didn't know the difference anyway, because they was already done skimping and getting by on basically nothing to begin with, other than shooting a few rabbits and killing a few deer and living on the land. That's the reason why most families back then had big families, preferably boys. That way they could work in the crops. That way they could help provide for the family and feed, milk the cows, plow the fields, cut the trees, build the barns. We're no longer living in that era anymore. But still, I think you get my point. That was the whole primary purpose or reasoning in behind the 1929 collapse, was out of panic and fear. And I'm sure that that's one of the reasons why that they're raising a red flag to all this, because what has occurred in the past 2 days has been monumental in the fact of such losses that has never seen anything like this before. Ever. Once more, this is all biblical Bible prophecy coming true. For in the last days we will see signs up into the heavens and signs up onto the earth, such as man has never seen before. So it don't startle me whenever I see things like this. It really doesn't. I mean, it concerns me. It does. It concerns me whenever I see people take a hit like this. It concerns me whenever I see viruses. It concerns me whenever I see global warming. It would concern me if there was an announcement tomorrow that there was an planetary alignment and there was a meter heading this way for everybody to get prepared in the next 48 hours. It concerns me, but at the same time, it does not over concern me. You know why? Because I've already read the book. I believe in the teachings of Christ. And I know what the great Messiah, not just the great prophet, but the great Son of God predicted and said was going to occur. So I've already made my preparations, not only spiritually, but also mentally. Also in other areas, I've already made my preparations. That way, whenever something like this occurs, I just don't fly off the handle and freak totally out. Like obviously some people are doing.
Agrees is the only thing they can do, is that there are cuts that this administration has made to HHS funding.
Or at least suggest, yeah.
There have been impacts in the way that HHS is resourcing folks in that department who handle disease issues. And I know this from talking to people in HHS. From a resource perspective, they are facing challenges they didn't have under prior administration.
Let's recall what private citizen Donald Trump, how he handled the Ebola outbreak. Private citizen Donald. But what would the Trump administration have done with the oil spill in the Gulf? I mean, they have not been tested with a real crisis.
They've been very fortunate. They've been very lucky. He's made tough calls, killing Soleimani, going after Baghdadi, but not the sort of 9/11 level or Deepwater Horizon.
The Deepwater Horizon is one of the more remote, in hindsight.
How about Katrina? You know, that hit the American people blindsided. We had never seen nothing on that level that got hit pertaining to FEMA. And FEMA, as far as I'm concerned, not only failed in those prepping potential areas down in southern Mississippi and Louisiana and Alabama, but they also failed in areas down in Florida. I just got to talking to somebody today that lived down in Florida for several years. I think she said it was in 204, maybe 203, that so many hurricanes hit down there in Florida. And she said, my God, I couldn't believe it at the amount of FEMA trailers that would come down there and set up, but they wouldn't let nobody live in them. She said it was ridiculous what FEMA was doing and how that they was preparing for this catastrophe. So they're right. This presidency has not had to deal with anything on that level. On that magnitude.
Remarkable crisis aversions in presidential history.
There hasn't been a massive requiring presidential level leadership, continued sustained presidential leadership under his watch, and perhaps that streak is coming to an end. Hopefully not, obviously.
And when he combines it with the stock market, that's not his best move.
That's right. And when he's also challenged at every level, the science at any number of different agencies. And so now when he comes out and says, okay, we need to pay attention to the science, there's no scientists at home, but also we are not believing what this administration is saying in a really critical moment.
Awful lot of actings, too, at DHS that we're suddenly having to answer questions to the Senate. I have no doubt there's a bunch of actings that are now petrified that they're acting. Anyway, Betsy, Michael, and Donna, thank you all. That's all we have for tonight. We'll be back tomorrow with more Meet the Press Daily. If it's Wednesday, we got a brand new Chuck Todd cast. My guest this week, Casey Hunt.
Mentioned. So I'm telling you all this because we have that story later tonight, including medical experts to provide facts and scientific context. A lot going on here and around the world. But we begin with one of the most consequential stories in America, this Democratic presidential race. And we begin on that.
That does not.
See on the corona. United States. That is later tonight. But before we do that, given all the politics, I'm thrilled to.
A lot of downtime.
As a
lot of downtime.
What do we got?
then
Looks like I'm going to go all the way to the end of what I have.
We are expecting a coronavirus threat briefing at 6:30 p.m. Eastern.
Okay. We've done discussed this. Going back to politics.
He's going to fund his presidential campaign with small dollar contributions, and I think we can do that. I think we can.
All right, there's nothing else for me to do. I've exceeded my limit.
Raise over $1 billion.
I'm at five.
It's a hard no.
I'm at 5:23.
It's a hard no. It's official. That's why reporters ask questions. And then
I'm at 5:23. There's nothing else I can do. I've went as far as I can go towards downtime. Sorry about that, folks.
spending, which helped Democrats, which helped gun safety.
All right, let's see.
a rough day for anybody who is close to this situation.
We'll stay on top of that situation, but there's other breaking news unfolding this hour. We're awaiting remarks by President Trump about the coronavirus and the dangers for Americans as the outbreak spreads worldwide. We're joined now by Congressman Sean Patrick Maloney. He's a Democrat from New York, a member of the Intelligence Committee. Congressman, thanks very much for joining us. The president says the administration is doing a great job.
And the reason why he's got that on his forehead is representing Ash Wednesday, which is a religious icon towards representing his faith.
Coronavirus. Are you satisfied with the response so far?
No, of course not. And if you compare it to the response to previous situations like this, it's inadequate. And the most dangerous thing is trying to happy talk a national health emergency because it suits some personal or political goal or because you're worried about the stock market. There's only one thing to do in this situation. It is to let the experts speak and to react accordingly. And that means surging resources at this, making sure we're going to have adequate test kits, adequate education, that you're going to be able to make sure that people who can't afford the treatments for this are being treated as well. The Secretary of Health and Human Services said something very alarming today about that, not being able to guarantee affordability and treatments. This is not the response we've seen in previous administrations of both parties. And I was in Asia last week. I can tell you this is a very serious situation. We don't need to panic, but we need to be prepared.
When the president walks up to that podium, the lectern there, what do you want him to say?
What I want him to say is that he is listening to the people who understand public health. He is listening to the experts on this, that he is going to demand better access into China so we can get better data and a better understanding of the course of this virus, that he is going to build an international effort to combat this, and that he is going to give the agencies the resources they need to do their work, that he will not be at war with science or with the truth, the way we've seen in the area of, say, the hurricane that didn't go where he said it did, or in the area of election security, where he doesn't like the fact that his intelligence professionals are telling him something he doesn't want to hear.
Exactly.
In this case, that's going to cost human life. He has to let the experts do their jobs, and he should be bringing a supplemental bill up to the House and the Senate right now for multiple billions of dollars to be prepared.
You think he should name a czar, a coronavirus czar, to take charge?
He should probably name the person whose job it is to worry about these things, who is Secretary Azar.
But he's got other issues to deal with, too, not just coronavirus.
Look, he needs to empower whoever it is. I'm less concerned about what you call the person or who it is than that they be empowered to listen to the experts. We actually have outstanding people at the Centers for Disease Control. It's alarming that the president has slashed that budget, that he has weakened that. critical part of our defense against these types of viral outbreaks. But it is not too late to let the experts speak, to provide the resources. We have some time if we get organized now. But people should be clear. This is going to be something that we're going to have to deal with.
Your governor, Andrew Cuomo, said it is highly probable that we will have people in New York State who test positive. Your district is just north of New York City, right there. How worried are you about what could happen in New York State?
Look, I don't want to over sell this, and I don't want to create undue concern. But what is necessary is that we appreciate that there's nothing really separating us from the spread of this virus any more than there was the folks in Italy or the folks in South Korea. Right. We're a little further away, but there are hundreds of flights a day that come in and out of the United States. Realistically, we are going to see this virus come here. It already has. Now we do have a lot under our control about what happens next. But that means letting the experts do their work, coming together across partisan lines, staring the truth in the face, and getting ready for this issue. This is not something that needs to become a major public health event in the United States, even if we have the spread of the cases, because like regular flu, the fatality rate is quite low. People should know that. There's no reason people who have the virus won't recover fully, but they need to be tested, they need to get treatment, they need to be kept away from other people, according to certain protocols that we know work. So I just want to see the president act like any other responsible leader in this position and follow the facts and the science and the experts and provide the resources and the leadership we need.
Because he's clearly concerned about the Dow Jones Industrial, 1,000 points on Monday, almost 1,000 points yesterday, another 100 points today. He's very worried about the economic fallout, especially during an election year.
Well, I'm concerned that you could see a situation like in Hurricane Katrina, where people were suffering at the Superdome because there was a desire not to acknowledge how serious the situation was. The problem is while he's trying to happy talk the stock market, we're going to lose a human life. And what price do you put on that? And the president needs to act like the president of all of us in a situation like this. It's too serious. He has to step up and do his job.
Representative Sean Patrick Maloney, thanks very much for coming in.
My pleasure.
Appreciate it very much. Dr. Sanjay Gupta is over at the White House briefing room getting ready for the President of the United States to walk in. I understand, Sanjay, you're getting some more information?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's news that is coming in on this just about constantly. As you know, Wolf, another person was confirmed to have this coronavirus infection in the United States some time ago. We're also hearing now about spot shortages with regard to medical devices, because keep in mind, so much of our medical supply, be it medications or devices, in some way is dependent on China. So this has been a concern for some time.
I'm going to go off of this right now because usually the president is late whenever it comes to his speeches. Right now, it's fixing to hit 5:30 my time, and because of it, I would like to go over to a major network, ABC, CBS, or NBC, and see if they got any kind of further development on the breaking of the Milwaukee incident. I don't know if there was one person that got killed, or 2, or 10, or 15. Let's go to that, and at the same time, we'll be keeping our eyes and ears open towards the president going to make his speech. Usually, the president is between 5 to 7, sometimes 10 minutes late on addressing the media, usually. It'd be my luck he won't be today.
Out of LAX, an American soldier, the first U.S. service member to test positive, as the number of cases in the U.S. rises to at least 60. Tonight, Dr. Jennifer Ashton right here answering your questions. Who has the virus been hitting hardest? And how to best protect you and your family. Some simple steps tonight. Also breaking at this hour, reports of multiple workers dead tonight. A workplace shooting, police say a fired employee returning today with a gun. The mid-air emergency, the passenger jet taking off from the New York City area. The fire on board, authorities say 2 batteries catching fire in a passenger's bag. The emergency landing. The major winter storm moving into the Northeast. Blizzard warnings at
snow. Al Roker will time it out. The NHL star speaking out for the first time since he collapsed during a game. What he's saying about that scary moment caught on camera and what was revealed about his future on the ice. And the price you pay this tax season. The scams to be on the lookout for.
Allegedly showing them running from the scene. The unexpected turn tonight in that toddler's deadly fall from a cruise ship. her grandfather now planning to plead guilty. And the massive fire, flames and smoke hundreds of feet into the air, traffic backed up for miles.
This is ABC World News Tonight with David Muir.
Good evening, and it's great to have you with us here on this Wednesday night. And we begin tonight with the coronavirus emergency. President Trump set to address the outbreak shortly, and it comes after the C.D.C. warned Americans to be prepared here at home, that it's not a matter of if, but when. Tonight, there are now more new cases being reported outside China than inside China for the first time. The virus spreading across the globe, including at least 60 cases right here in the U.S. and at least 8 states. Spreading quickly across Europe tonight as well. At least 13 European countries now. In Italy alone, at least 440 people now infected. The death toll there, at least 12. And the first U.S. service member has now been diagnosed at a military base in South Korea,
including the shooter.
It is a horrible, horrible day for the employees here. It is a very rough day for anybody who is close to this situation.
With heavily armed tactical teams flooding the area, officers with long guns stormed buildings. Employees on lockdown told to hide anywhere they could, alerted of what police call a critical incident.
Man, I'm so sorry. I'm so sick of watching incidences like this occur again and again and again right here in America, towards somebody going in there and shooting up a bunch of innocent people. It just absolutely just makes me eerie and sick at my stomach every time that I see anything like this, because I know the casualties of human life. We are steadily walking away from the reality of biblical Bible prophecy of peace and utopia. We're going in the wrong direction.
As others nearby were ordered to shelter in place, including several schools.
This has never been anything that I would have ever thought would happen around here.
Located in Milwaukee, not far from Marquette University, Molson Coors Company sits on a sprawling campus with several buildings and more than 1,000 employees.
This is a very important company to the city, and we all have friends or know people who work there.
Tonight, another active shooter terrorizing another community amid reports of multiple people dead.
And tonight here in Milwaukee, you can still see that it's very much an active crime scene. Now, in addition to local law enforcement, ATF is on the ground assisting. We're also standing by for an update from police. Lester?
Kathy Park, that unfolding situation. Thank you, Kathy. Now to breaking news on the coronavirus and efforts to prevent its spread here in the U.S. President Trump will hold a news conference any minute now at the White House. Our Jeff Bennett is there with late details. Jeff, what do we know?
Lester, the president clearly wants to show the American people that his administration is in control and properly handling this response after days of mixed messaging.
We're really sad.
Back home in the U.S., there are 59 cases of coronavirus here, and health officials say that American families should be prepared for similar outbreaks.
All right. Operations to stop the virus from spreading. Here's Tom Costello.
At the University of Nebraska Medical Center, the first human trial for a coronavirus treatment is underway. The first patient, one of 14 cruise ship passengers from Japan, now undergoing treatment in Omaha. Eventually, 400 patients will be in the trial worldwide.
These are the people that will potentially have a more severe disease, more sequelae, and potentially even be a life-threatening situation.
Though the nation's health experts caution a vaccine may not be widely available for 12 to 18 months.
If this cycles and comes back next year, then having a vaccine a year and a half from now will be very applicable.
The latest numbers from the CDC, 60 known coronavirus cases in the U.S., though that number is expected to grow. The HHS secretary on Capitol Hill.
The risk right now is very low to Americans. From a public health perspective, we technically are in a state of containment in the United States.
At Holy Name Medical Center in Teaneck, New Jersey, the medical staff is already preparing.
Want to make sure you're pulling the cuff of the glove up over the entire sleeve.
Reviewing protocols for keeping a contagious virus from spreading.
This is called negative pressure room,
including air-sealed treatment rooms.
And any staff that went into that room would wear appropriate gloves, goggles, masks, and gowns, with appropriate hand washing.
While San Francisco has no reports of coronavirus yet, the mayor has declared a state of emergency to free up resources. Other big city mayors trying to reassure the public.
Right now, we have 1,200 hospital beds that we can make available immediately.
for any individual who is in the testing process or who tests positive or needs isolation in a hospital setting.
In the event that we need to ramp up quarantining, we are absolutely prepared to do that.
Universities across the country are suspending their study abroad programs in hard-hit Italy and Asia. University of Illinois students Carly Peldiak and Grace Clavorn have left Italy and are now in Vienna, not sure where they're going next.
So I'm actually really freaked out. The first time in my life I felt like I don't know where I'm going to be next week.
The coronavirus threat still looming large.
And Tom, there's been some confusion over whether there are enough protective masks and gowns in the event of an outbreak. What's the reality check on that?
So New York City today said it is asking the federal government to help get more protective equipment so that it's prepared. The FDA says there is no shortage of masks, of gowns, of gloves right now. It has 30 million stockpiled, but if there were a true pandemic, it might need 10 times that many. Right now, though, it is not sounding the alarm bell on that.
Yeah, we don't want to sound fearful, but certainly we need to be prepared. Thank you, Tom. And we're gaining new insights into the evolution of the
very good early decisions that were actually ridiculed at the beginning. We closed up our borders to flights coming in from certain areas that were hit by the coronavirus and hit pretty hard. And we did it very early. A lot of people thought we shouldn't have done it that early, and we did, and it turned out to be a very good thing. And the number one priority from our standpoint is the health and safety of the American people, and that's the way I viewed it when I made that decision. Because of all we've done, the risk to the American people remains very low. And we have the greatest experts in the world, really in the world, right here. The people that are called upon by other countries when things like this happen. We're ready to adapt, and we're ready to do whatever we have to as the disease spreads, if it spreads. As most of you know, the level that we've had in our country is very low, and those people are getting better, or we think that in almost all cases, the better are getting. We have a total of 15. We took in some from Japan. You heard about that, because they're American citizens and they're in quarantine, and they're getting better too. But we felt we had an obligation to do that. It could have been as many as 42. And we found that it was just an obligation we felt that we had. We could have left them, and that would have been very bad, I think, American people. And they're recovering. Of the 15 people, the original 15, as I call them, 8 of them have returned to their homes, to stay in their homes until fully recovered. 1 is in the hospital, and 5 have fully recovered. And 1 is, we think, in pretty good shape. And it's in between hospital and going home. So we have a total of, 15 people, and they're in a process of recovering, with some already having fully recovered. We started out by looking at certain things. We've been working with the Hill very, very carefully, very strongly. And I think we have very good bipartisan spirit for money. We were asking for $2.5 billion, and we think that's a lot. But the Democrats and I guess Senator Schumer wants us to have much more than that. And normally in life, I'd say, we'll take it. We'll take it. If they want to give more, we'll do more. We're going to spend whatever's appropriate. Hopefully, we're not going to have to spend so much, because we really think we've done a great job in keeping it down to a minimum. And again, we've had tremendous success beyond what people would have thought. Now, at the same time, you do have some outbreaks in some countries. Italy and various countries are having some difficulty. China, you know about where it started. I spoke with President Xi. We had a great talk. He's working very hard, I have to say. He's working very, very hard. And if you can count on the reports coming out of China, that spread has gone down quite a bit. The infection seems to have gone down over the last 2 days. As opposed to getting larger, it's actually gotten smaller. In one instance where
he said, if you can count on. Did you understand what he said? If you can count on what the people are telling us.
It's somewhat reliable. It seems to have gotten quite a bit smaller. With respect to the money that's being negotiated, they can do whatever they want. I mean, we'll do the 2.5. We're requesting 2.5. Some Republicans would like us to get 4, and some Democrats would like us to get 8.5. And we'll be satisfied whatever it is. We're bringing in a specialist, very highly regarded specialist, tomorrow, who works actually at the State Department. Very, very tremendously talented in doing this. I want you to understand something that shocked me when I saw it, that I spoke with Dr. Fauci on this, and I was really amazed, and I think most people are amazed to hear it. The flu in our country kills from 25,000 people to 69,000 people a year. That was shocking to me. And so far, if you look at what we have with the 15 people, and they're recovering, one is pretty sick, but hopefully will recover. But the others are in great shape. But think of that, 25,000 to 69,000. Over the last 10 years, we've lost 360,000. These are people that have died from the flu, from what we call the flu. Hey, did you get your flu shot? And that's something. Now, what we've done is we've stopped non-U.S. citizens from coming into America from China. That was done very early on. We're screening people, and we have been at a very high level, screening people coming into the country from infected areas. We have in quarantine those infected and those at risk. We have a lot of great quarantine facilities. We're rapidly developing a vaccine, and they can speak to you. The professionals can speak to you about that. The vaccine is coming along well, and in speaking to the doctors, we think this is something that we can develop fairly rapidly, a vaccine for the future, and coordinate with the support of our partners. We have great relationships with all of the countries that we're talking about. Some fairly large number of countries. Some it's one person, and many countries have no problem whatsoever. And we'll see what happens. But we're very, very ready for this, for anything, whether it's going to be a breakout of larger proportions or whether or not we're at that very low level. And we want to keep it that way. So we're at the low level. As they get better, we take them off the list, so that we're going to be pretty soon at only 5 people. And we could be at just 1 or 2 people over the next short period of time. So we've had very good luck. The Johns Hopkins, I guess it is a highly respected, great place. They did a study, comprehensive, the country's best and worst prepared for an epidemic. And the United States is now, we're rated number 1. We're rated number 1 for being prepared. This is a list of different countries. I don't want to get in your way, especially since you do such a good job. This is a list of the different countries. United States is rated number 1, most prepared. United Kingdom, Netherlands, Australia, Canada, Thailand, Sweden, Denmark, South Korea, Finland. This is a list of the best rated countries in the world by Johns Hopkins. We're doing something else that's important to me, because he's been terrific in many ways, but he's also very good on health care. And we really followed him very closely. A lot of states do. When Mike was governor, Mike Pence of Indiana, they've established great health care. They have a great system there, a system that a lot of the other states have really looked to and changed their systems. They wanted to base it on the Indiana system. He's very good. And I think, and he's really very expert at the field. And what I've done is I'm going to be announcing exactly right now that I'm going to be putting our Vice President, Mike Pence, in charge. And Mike will be working with the professionals, doctors, and everybody else that's working. The team is brilliant. I spent a lot of time with the team over the last couple of weeks, but they're totally brilliant, and we're doing really well. And Mike is going to be in charge, and Mike will report back to me. but he's got a certain talent for this, and I'm going to ask Mike Pence to say a few words, please. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mr. President. President Trump's made clear from the first days of this administration we have no higher priority than the safety, security, health, and well-being of the American people. And from the first word of an outbreak of the coronavirus, the President took unprecedented steps to protect the American people from the spread of this disease. He recounted those briefly, but the establishment of travel restrictions, aggressive quarantine effort of Americans that are returning, the declaration of a public health emergency, and establishing the White House Corona Task Force are all reflective of the urgency that the President has brought to a whole-of-government approach. As a former governor from the state where the first MERS case emerged in 2014, I know full well the importance of presidential leadership, the importance of administration leadership, and the vital role of partnerships of state and local governments and health authorities in responding to the potential threat of dangerous infectious diseases. And I look forward, Mr. President, to serving in this role and bringing together all the members of the Corona Task Force that you've established, the HHS, C.D.C., DHS, the Department of Transportation, and State. This team has been, at your direction, Mr. President, meeting every day since it was established. My role will be to continue to bring that team together, to bring to the President the best options for action to see to the safety and well-being and health of the American people. We'll also be continuing to reach out to governors, state and local officials. In fact, in the recent days, the White House met with over 40 state, county, and city health officials from over 30 states and territories to discuss how to respond to the potential threat of the coronavirus. We'll be working with them in renewed ways to make sure they have the resources to be able to respond. And as the President said, we'll be adding additional personnel here at the White House to support our efforts on the President's behalf. We'll also be working with members of Congress to ensure that the resources are available for this whole of government response, and we'll be working very closely with Secretary Azar and his team that have done an outstanding job communicating to the public to ensure the American people have the best information on ways to protect themselves and their families, and also that the public has the most timely information on the potential threat to the American people. Mr. President, as we've been briefed, while the threat to the American public remains low of a spread of the coronavirus, you have directed this team to take all steps necessary to continue to ensure the health and well-being of the American people. And the people of this country can be confident that under your leadership, we will continue to bring the full resources of the federal government in coordination with our state and local partners to see to the health and well-being and to the effective response to the coronavirus here in the United States of America. With that, the President's asked me to recognize the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Alex Azar, and also the Deputy Director of C.D.C., Dr. Ann Shaka, for remarks. Secretary.
Well, thank you, Mr. Vice President, and thank you, Mr. President, for gathering your public health experts here today and for your strong leadership in keeping America safe. And I just want to say I could not be more delighted that you've asked the Vice President, my old friend and colleague, to lead this whole of government approach with us under the emergency support function number 8. As of today, we have 15 cases of COVID-19 that have been detected in the United States, with only one new case detected in the last 2 weeks. We also have 3 cases among Americans repatriated from Wuhan and 42 cases among Americans repatriated who had been stuck on the Diamond Princess in Japan. The President's early and decisive actions, including travel restrictions, have succeeded in buying us incredibly valuable time. This has helped us contain the spread of the virus, handle the cases that we have, and prepare for the possibility that we will need to mitigate broader spread of infections within the United States. The president's actions, taken with the strong support of his scientific advisors, have proven to be appropriate, wise, and well calibrated to the situation. We're grateful for the hard work that healthcare workers, first responders, communities, and state and local leaders have put into the response so far. Because of this hard work and the president's leadership, the immediate risk to the American public has been and continues to be low. Our containment strategy has been working. At the same time, what every one of our experts and leaders have been saying for more than a month now remains true. The degree of risk has the potential to change quickly, and we can expect to see more cases in the United States. That is why we've been reminding the American public and our state, local, and private sector partners that they should be aware of what a broader response would look like. C.D.C. has recommended that the American public, and especially state and local governments, businesses, and other organizations, should refresh themselves on how they would respond in the event that the situation worsens. We're encouraging Americans to learn what future steps might be necessary to keep themselves and their communities safe. Knowing these potential steps now can help keep the risk to you and your community low. Americans can find useful information at cdc.gov/COVID, COVID-19. And we're working closely with government and private sector partners to educate them about preparedness. Finally, we've begun working with Congress to secure the funding that we need. There are 5 major priorities in the White House request to Congress that the White House made on Monday. These priorities are: first, expanding our surveillance network; second, support for state and local governments work; third and fourth, development of therapeutics and vaccines; and fifth, manufacturing and purchase of personal protective equipment like gowns and masks. As chairman of the President's Coronavirus Task Force, I'm committed to providing regular updates from our coordinated interagency process. We've had our top public health leaders, like those joining me here today, speaking to the media many times per day to inform the American public. The Trump administration is going to continue to be aggressively transparent, keeping the American people and the media apprised of the situation and what everyone can do. With that, I'm going to hand things over to Dr. Ann Schuchat. Dr. Schuchat is the senior career official at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the principal deputy director, with an over 30-year career at the C.D.C. in public health and as a member of the United States Public Health Service Commission Corps. So, Dr. Schuchat, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks so much, Mr. Secretary. As you know, this has been a difficult and challenging time, and our hearts go out to the individuals who have been directly affected by the virus and to all those who have been working tirelessly in responding to it. Our aggressive containment strategy here in the United States has been working and is responsible for the low levels of cases that we have so far. However, we do expect more cases, and this is a good time to prepare. As you heard, it's the perfect time for businesses, healthcare systems, universities, and schools to look at their pandemic preparedness plans, dust them off, and make sure that they're ready. And we have lots more information at the CDC's website and in partnership on how to do that. But it's also a really good time for the American public to prepare and for you to know what this means for you. The coronavirus that we're talking about is a respiratory virus. It's spread in a similar way to the common cold or to influenza. It's spread through coughs and sneezes. And so those everyday sensible measures that we tell people to do every year with the flu are important here. Covering your cough, staying home when you're sick, and washing your hands. Tried and true, not very exciting measures, but really important ways that you can prevent the spread of respiratory viruses. So the trajectory of what we're looking at over the weeks and months ahead is very uncertain, but many of the steps that we have taken over the past 15 years to prepare for pandemic influenza and our experience going through the 2009 H1N1 pandemic of influenza remind us of the kinds of steps that our healthcare system, our businesses, our communities and schools may need to take. We're in this together, all of government, the public and the private sector, and the CDC wants to make sure you have the best information available every day. Thank you.
I just want to give you a very quick update on the. My name is Dr. Tony Fauci. I'm the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases at NIH. Just a very quick update on the countermeasure development in the form of vaccines and therapeutics. I had told this audience at a recent press briefing that we have a number of vaccine candidates and one prototype one to give you a feel for the time frame of a vaccine and what its impact might be now and in subsequent years, is that I told you we would have a vaccine that we would be putting into trials to see if it's safe and if it induces a response that you would predict would be protective in about 3 months. I think it's going to be a little bit less than that. It's probably going to be closer to 2 months. That would then take about 3 months to determine if it's safe and immunogenic, which gives us 6 months. Then you graduate from a trial, which is phase 1 of 45 people, to a trial that involves hundreds, if not low thousands of people to determine efficacy. At the earliest, an efficacy trial would take an additional 6 to 8 months. So although this is the fastest we have ever gone from a sequence of a virus to a trial, it still would not be any applicable to the epidemic unless we really wait about a year to a year and a half. Now, that means 2 things. One, the answer to containing is public health measures. We can't rely on a vaccine over the next several months to a year. However, if this virus, which we have every reason to believe it is quite conceivable that it will happen, will go beyond just a season and come back and recycle next year. If that's the case, we hope to have a vaccine. And then finally and briefly, therapeutics. There are a number of antiviral drugs that are being tested. A few days ago, we initiated a randomized controlled trial of a drug called remdesivir, which has antiviral activity in vitro in an animal model. The good news about that is that it's a trial that's randomized to either placebo or standard of care and drug and standard of care, which means that we will know reasonably soon whether it works. And if it does, we will then have an effective therapy to distribute. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, please. Thank you very much, Mr. President. First of all, you have just come from a long and busy trip from India. And as far as this coronavirus is concerned, you have a great scientific and medical team behind you or with you, and I'm sure they will keep America safe. As far as your trip to India, Mr. President, where do we go from here as far as U.S.-India relations are concerned? And also, Mr. President, you are very famous in India, and Prime Minister Modi is very famous in America. What is the future? And Indian-American community is with you, Mr. President. Yeah, we won't talk too much about that other than I just got back. Long flight. It's a long flight. He's a great gentleman, a great leader. It's an incredible country. We were treated very, very well, and we really enjoyed it. A lot of tremendous progress was made in terms of relationship. Our relationship with India is extraordinary right now, and we're going to be doing a lot of business with India. They're sending billions and billions of dollars now to the United States, but we'd rather talk about this right now.
The C.D.C. said yesterday that they believe it's inevitable that the virus will spread in the United States, and it's not a question of if, but when. Do you agree with that assessment?
Well, I don't think it's inevitable. It probably will. It possibly will. It could be at a very small level, or it could be at a larger level. Whatever happens, we're totally prepared. We have the best people in the world. You see that from the study. We have the best prepared people, the best people in the world. Congress is willing to give us much more than we're even asking for. That's nice for a change. But we are totally ready, willing, and able. It's a term that we use. It's ready, willing, and able. We have. It's going to be very well under control. Now, it may get bigger. It may get a little bigger. It may not get bigger at all. We'll see what happens. But regardless of what happens, we're totally prepared. Please.
You talked a little earlier about the screening measures that you put in place and the travel restrictions you put in place regarding China. At this point, as the virus spreads.
Good evening. I'm Chris Matthews back in Washington. We've been watching up there President Trump giving a...
He's putting Vice President Pence in charge of the effort. Do you have confidence in this administration to handle a potential pandemic? What would you do differently?
I feel so much better. No. Number one, he fired the pandemic team 2 years ago. Number two, he's been defunding Centers for Disease Control, so we don't have the experts in place that we need. I hope he's right that the virus doesn't come here, that nobody gets sick. That would be a wonderful outcome. But the bottom line is we are not ready for this kind of thing. And the president is not a scientist, is a nice way to phrase it, doesn't seem to believe in science. We are as exposed to this kind of thing as we've ever been, probably more so.
What would you do if you were president right now?
Well, right now you have to marshal the teams. Unfortunately, it doesn't have a team in place. I can tell you what we did in City Hall back in New York. We had, for Hurricane Sandy, for 9/11, for the swine flu, there are a whole bunch of things that happened during the 12 years I was in office, and we were ready for it in the sense that we had played out what would happen, how we would communicate with people, how we would distribute drugs, how we'd include the hospitals and the nurses, and what do you do about the seniors' homes and people with special needs and that sort of thing. You can't just walk in and all of a sudden go and create the kind of environment where everybody gets taken care of. And he has left us very exposed. And I think it just, I spell team T-E-A-M. There's no I in team. I always joke about it. But in his case, the only letter he uses is I. And nobody's smart enough to know all this stuff, particularly since this is not his bag, if you will. He doesn't have any understanding of science, of public health, and he has left us without the team that he needs to address the issues. Now, there are some people from C.D.C. and these other agencies that are competent and there, but you have to plan for this stuff. You have to game it out. You have to see what will work and what doesn't. And none of this stuff is easy. You say all of a sudden, well, what happens if this will move people? But then it turns out that there's no electricity when that happens, so the buses don't work and the cars don't go, the street lights are all stopped. And unless you really go through a simulation all the time, you just can't feel comfortable and be prepared. Then you have to trust to luck, and I hope we have some luck, but that's not a good strategy.
I want to go into our audience. As you know, as we talked about, as I mentioned at the top, the mayor of Milwaukee reports multiple people have been killed in a shooting at the Miller Coors campus. It brings me to the topic of gun violence, and that's where we want to begin tonight. I want you to meet Melvin Graham Jr. He's the brother of Cynthia Graham Hurd. She was a beloved librarian here in Charleston for 31 years. She was killed in the shooting at Emmanuel AME Church in June of 2015, along with 8 other people. Melvin says he's supporting former Vice President Biden. Melvin, I'm so sorry for your loss. Welcome. I'm glad you're here. What is your question?
Good evening, Mayor Bloomberg. My question is, what can you do to bring common sense gun control into law and close all the loopholes with and without Congress?
Well, we've created an organization, Every Town for Gun Violence. It has 6 million members across the country. A subgroup within it is something called Moms Demand Action. And you see them, they have these red shirts on, Moms Demand Action on it. And what we've done so far is we have about 20, I think it's 21 states that now have background checks, which I'll come back to in a second, and also red flag laws. Unfortunately, last time I checked, there were 50 states in the union, and we still have 30 to go, and it would be much easier if we could do this at a federal level. But I noticed this just backstage when I was watching the president. He said our prayers should be with the families, and I'm sympathetic with that. But what he should have said is, and we're going to do something to have background checks to stop guns being sold to people who shouldn't buy them. People, look, Whether you like it or not, the Second Amendment gives you the right to bear arms. The Supreme Court has said there are reasonable restrictions that we can put on that privilege without violating the Constitution. The reasonable privileges include things like having background checks so you don't sell guns to minors, to people with psychiatric problems, or people with criminal records. And if you did that and just took 24 hours to go through the background check, you would make a very big difference in this country. Let me give you the numbers. This year, 40,000 people will be shot with illegal and legal handguns. Forget about the assault weapons, which is another disgrace. We shouldn't be selling assault weapons to the average person. They're designed for the military to kill as many people as possible. They're not used for going out and hunting. And the last time I saw a deer with a flak jacket was a long time ago. So you really have to focus on this. And if you have background checks, and let me step back for a second. The federal law requires you to have a background check before you can buy a gun in this country if you buy it from a gun store. So the gun rights activists would say, oh, you're going to take away my freedoms. No, right now you can't go into a gun store and buy a gun if you have a psychiatric problem, you're a criminal or a minor. And in fact, what my organization has done is we sent undercover people into these stores to see whether or not they would insist on a background check. And when they didn't, we sued them. And you can measure the fact that they've really done something. But to get back, out of the 40,000 people that are going to get killed, a majority of them are suicides. And one thing about suicides, the psychiatrists will say, generally, if you want to commit suicide and you can't do it right away, you forget about it. And so they would say the first thing to save lives with suicides is just to stop people from doing it for 24 hours. And that's what the background check does. And if they can't get a gun, they don't change and go to another kind of ways to kill themselves. They just don't. And in the 20 states where we have background checks, the suicide rate with guns has come down dramatically, and it's not gone up with other ways of killing yourself.
Yeah.
So an answer to your question is, have the background checks apply to gun show sales and internet sales. The reason they're not covered by the law is when the law was written, the internet didn't exist and gun shows didn't exist. Those are creations to go around the background check law for stores. And we would be much better off if we could do that on a national level. So I think you should ban AK-47s, automatic weapons, and insist on background checks for anybody, no matter how they buy it, whether it's on the internet or in a gun show or in gun stores. And then the other thing you've got to do is have some education and have something called red flag laws. Red flag laws are laws where you can go to a judge and say, look, my friend or my family member is acting strangely and there is a gun in the house. I would like you to take away the gun while we get psychiatric help for this person. And it's just a preventive thing. And it actually does save some lives. None of these things are panaceas for the gun problem, but they certainly make an enormous difference in how we address it. And thanks to the Moms Demand Action, who go and picket and try to get states to pass gun laws, background check laws, and every town that funds a lot, and there's a lot of donors to this. It's a very interesting thing.
Another question on gun violence is
advantage. This isn't about political advantage. We're all trying to do the right thing. They shouldn't be saying, this is terrible, President Trump isn't asking for enough money. How stupid a thing to say. If they want to give us more money, that's okay, we'll take more money. Some Republicans think we should have more money too, that's okay, we'll take more money. But they shouldn't demean the people that are on the stage who are the finest in the world. They're not demeaning me. They're demeaning the greatest healthcare professionals in the world and people that do exactly what we're talking about.
Your campaign today sued the New York Times for an opinion piece.
Yeah.
Is it your opinion or is it your contention that if people have an opinion contrary to yours that they should be sued?
Well, when they get the opinion totally wrong, as the New York Times did, and frankly, they've got a lot wrong over the last number of years. So we'll see how let that work its way through the courts.
Right.
No. If you read it, you'll see it's beyond an opinion. That's not an opinion. That's something much more than an opinion. They did a bad thing, and there'll be more coming. There'll be more coming.
Tokyo will host the Summer Olympics this July. Do you expect Tokyo will be?
I hope so, because Shinzo Abe is a very good friend of mine. I love the people of Japan, and I hope it's going to be in good shape. As you know, you have a number of people in Japan who have been infected. I hear they're doing a very professional job, which doesn't surprise me at all. With Shinzo and with all of the people you have, I know Japan very well. I think they're going to handle it very well. It's a little tight, you know, it's a little tight. They spent billions of dollars building one of the most beautiful venues I've ever seen. And your Prime Minister is very proud of it. I hope it's going to be fine. We hope it will.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. The doctor at C.D.C. just talked about dusting off preparedness plans, but coming from you, it has more weight. Do you feel that U.S. schools should be preparing for a coronavirus spreading?
I would think so, yes. I mean, I haven't spoken specifically about that with the various doctors, but I would think so, yes. I think every aspect of our society should be prepared. I don't think it's going to come to that, especially with the fact that we're going down, not up. We're going very substantially down, not up. But yeah, I think schools should be preparing and, you know, get ready just in case. The words are just in case. We don't think we're going to be there. We don't think we're going to be anywhere close. And again, if you look at some countries, they are coming down. It's starting to go in the other direction. This will end. This will end. You look at flu season, I said 26,000 people. I'd never heard of a number like that. 26,000 people going up to 69,000 people, doctor, you told me before. 69,000 people die every year from 26 to 69, every year from the flu. Now think of that. It's incredible. So far, the results of all of this that everybody's reading about, and part of the thing is you want to keep it the way it is. You don't want to see panic, because there's no reason to be panicked about. But when I mentioned the flu, I said, actually, I asked the various doctors, I said, is this just like flu? Because people die from the flu. And this is very unusual. And it is a little bit different, but in some ways it's easier, and in some ways it's a little bit tougher. But we have it so well under control. I mean, we really have done a very good job. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. You mentioned the stock market earlier. To go back to that, to be clear, the Dow Jones dropped more than 2,000 points this week. Are you suggesting that that was overblown? Are financial markets overreacting here?
I think the financial markets are very upset when they look at the Democrat candidate standing on that stage making fools out of themselves. And they say, if we ever have a president like this, and there's always a possibility, it's an election, you know, who knows what happens, right? I think we're going to win. I think we're going to win by a lot. But when they look at the statements made by the people standing behind those podiums, I think that has a huge effect, yeah.
Had to do with the coronavirus?
Oh, I think it did. I think it did. But I think you can add quite a bit of sell-off to what they're seeing, because they're seeing the potential. You know, again, I think we're going to win. I feel very confident of it. We've done everything and much more than I said we were going to do. You look at what we've done. What we've done is incredible, with the tax cuts and regulation cuts and rebuilding our military, taking care of our vets and getting them choice and accountability. All of the things we've done, protecting our Second Amendment. I mean, they view that, the Second Amendment, they're going to destroy the Second Amendment. When people look at that, they say, this is not good. So you add that in. I really believe that's a factor. But no, this is what we're talking about is the virus. That's what we're talking about. But I do believe in terms of CNBC and in terms of Fox Business, I do believe that that's a factor, yeah. And I think after I win the election, I think the stock market's going to boom like it's never boomed before. Just like it did, by the way, after I won the last election. The stock market the day after went up like a rocket ship.
At what point would you be considering loosening the travel restrictions regarding China?
When we're at a point where we don't have a problem. You know, we're not going to loosen the travel restrictions. That's what saved us. Had I not made, Mike alluded to it, had I not made a decision very early on not to take people from a certain area, we wouldn't be talking this way. We'd be talking about many more people would have been infected. I took a lot of heat. I mean, some people call me racist because I made a decision so early. And we had never done that as a country before, let alone early. So it was a bold decision. It turned out to be a good decision. But I was criticized by the Democrats. They called me a racist because I made that decision, if you can believe that one. We have to all work together. We can't say bad things, and especially when we have the best team anywhere in the world, and we really gave it an early start. We gave it a very early start.
Have consistently called for enormous cuts to the C.D.C, the NIH, and the WHO. You've talked a lot today about how these professionals are excellent, how they're critical and necessary. Does this experience at all give you pause about those?
No, because we can get money and we can increase staff. We know all the people. We know all the good people. It was a question I asked the doctors before. Some of the people we cut, they haven't been used for many, many years. And if we ever need them, we can get them very quickly. And rather than spending the money, and I'm a business person, I don't like having thousands of people around when you don't need them. When we need them, we can get them back very quickly. For instance, we're bringing some people in tomorrow that are already in this, great government that we have, and very specifically for this. We can build up very, very quickly, and we've already done that. I mean, we really have built up. We have a great staff, and using Mike, I'm doing that because he's in the administration, and he's very good at doing what he does and doing as it relates to this. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, please.
Mr. President.
Yeah, go ahead.
So far your administration.
I picked him with you.
So far your administration is only testing less than 500 people, and health officials are questioning whether that's enough, comparing to other countries who have tested more than tens of thousands of people. Are you planning to test more people?
Well, we're testing everybody that we need to test, and we're finding very little problem. Now, you treat this like a flu. We were, in fact, I might ask one of the doctors to come up and explain it. You want to wash your hands a lot. You want to stay, if you're not feeling well, if you feel you have a flu, stay inside, sort of quarantine yourself, don't go outside. But there are certain steps that you can take that we won't even be necessary. In many cases, when you catch this, it's very light. You don't even know there's a problem. Sometimes they just get the sniffles. Sometimes they just get something where they're not feeling quite right. And sometimes they feel really bad. But that's a little bit like the flu. It's a little like the regular flu that we have flu shots for. And we'll essentially have a flu shot for this in a fairly quick manner. Yeah, go ahead.
I want to stop right there and weigh in on what he's talking about. First of all, I agree that he made the decision, or somebody made a decision in his administration towards retracting or retrieving a great deal of airfare flights from A to Z, from A to B, which has been a great contributor towards slowing it down in mass quantities, towards it not coming over here. That was probably one of the greatest, smartest decisions that his administration has made. Out of all the other decisions, that was probably one of the smartest ones, even though he got criticized for it. Also, the things that he's talking about right now in regard to having all these people that's fired are no longer there. I disagree with the fact that you can just get on the telephone and call up a bunch of people and have them at beck and call at your will whenever a crisis hits. That's the part that I disagree with. The part that I do agree with is the fact that you got thousands of people sitting around making high dollar checks, $2,000 a week or more, that ain't doing nothing. So once more, we're talking about that tight line walk, that fine walk that one has to walk here towards being concerned but not being panicky. Being ready but not being overzealous. The Senate has already said that they got a green light on this if it does happen to fall into the same level of crisisness as we have seen in China. Hopefully, the prayers and the precautions that has been made here in America, that we won't see this type of problems originate. But I still go back to what we was originally talking about before the president ever spoke, that I feel like what has brought this to a head as quick as it has, with the stock market dropping basically 2,000 points just within the past 72 hours. That was startling. That would startle most any business-related person that's seen those numbers. And I've said that a lot of people is going to use this for an excuse of having the jitters, kind of like the Y2K. How many people went out and bought extra food, extra water, extra this, extra that, and then it was a flop. This gives international, local 401k investors as well as stock market gurus a reason to start raking the cream off the top. And the next thing you know, a lot of people will be made multi-millionaires overnight. Overnight. Which brings me to one final concern. Before President Bush left office, President Jr., he done a bailout. Everybody knows about it, or most people does, of $775 billion to bail out the banks, major car industries, as well as real estate markets. In that bailout, God only knows how many people walked away scot-free towards basically getting rich off the American people's grief and off the American people's tax-paying dollars. I just hope to God that whatever money is delegated to from the Senate or from Congress, that it won't be mishandled and mismanaged the same way as other so-called crises has occurred, including the crisisness of FEMA pertaining to Katrina. That things will not be mismanaged to the point of giving people an opportunity of basically raking the American people over the coals towards stealing good, hard-earned, tax-paying dollars. I just hope to God that there will be somebody manning the store. That way, it will be more in control, especially with us being right now over $23 trillion in debt. There's no doubt what Donald Trump done by putting on the bans of the flights has probably saved thousands of lives. That doesn't mean that it's going to be long-term effective 2 weeks from now or 30 days from now, especially whenever you see how the virus has expanded and extended into other countries like Spain and Iran, Iraq, South Korea, North Korea, other parts of the country. It's very vicious. It's very, this virus is very aggressive. So we really don't know. We're walking into territory here that we really don't know from a medical perspective of what to expect. Not in full circle here in America. If it ever hits other countries that isn't properly as adapted as the Americans, pertaining to places like Africa or Syria or other places like that, it would probably be devastating to see this many people get sick because their medical advances aren't near as good as what ours are. But I just pray that we have taken the proper precautions and not seeing it take off like a wildfire, like it has over in China. Like I said, that program that I heard last night, I wish that I would have recorded it. It was some sort of off-the-wall news agency coming on over in the religious channels. And the information that they was given just absolutely floored me whenever they started saying stuff like that. It was intentionally, the virus was intentionally opened out to the general public to try to control all the massive protesting that was going on in China, and to hear where they had those incinerator ovens going 24/7 towards having people vaporized from the planet in mass quantities. The way that these people was talking about last night was heartbreaking. It was almost like hearing about the communist Nazi Holocaust. The way that they was putting it last night, it was that frightening. And I don't know if people are doing this purposely to try to bring panic into society, or if these are occurrences that are actually occurring, because I'm not over in China. I can't verify whether or not these occurrences are happening or not happening. I didn't even know it until today that the vast majority of the Asian people over there do not believe in funerals like we do over here in America. They actually, that's part of their practices, is to have the body consumed like that. I didn't know that. We're all living and learning. We're all growing and expanding and evolving. But I do believe this. What has prompted the president getting on national TV tonight was because what went on in Wall Street towards basically the crooks, the sharks, raking the cream off the top, and this is giving them a reason to do it, towards giving the investors the jitters. I think that's probably the main reason why that we're hearing from the president tonight. And of course, he's not going to come out and say that. He's going to use the excuse of human casualties and fatalities and the problem with the coronavirus. That's the reason why he's going to say what he's saying tonight. But it was a domino effect to the point that one thing led to another, and another thing led to another, and wow, whenever you see the market do like it did in the trillions, it was over $1 trillion it lost. Where did that $1 trillion go? I'm going to tell you where it went. It went in the pockets of not hundreds, but thousands, maybe even millions of investors that said, this is the time to rake the cream off the top, baby. That's where it went. They'll get stinking filthy rich. They'll hook up and head down to Florida with the rest of them and buy them a big, nice yacht, a big, nice home overlooking a mountain or overlooking the ocean, and live comfortably the rest of their lives while the rest of us is living off of a dream. And when the president talks about people having a cold and not going to work, you know, that's a lot easier said than done. Especially whenever you have baby diapers to have to buy and baby milk to have to buy. Whenever you have rent and you got to keep tires on the vehicle. And you got all these other problems that you're having to address pertaining to medical issues. That's a lot easier said than done, towards just isolating yourself up into a cocoon state and basically self-medicating yourself because you got a cold or you're running a little bit of a fever. it's not practical that the first little bitty hiccup, people get sick leave and go home. You know why it's not practical? It's because not everybody has federal jobs to the point of having sick leave. A matter of fact, some employers will tell you that if you can't be efficient on the job, adequate, giving out 110%, we'll find somebody else that can. That's usually the employer's attitude to the employees, that if you can't be here every morning when you're supposed to be, and if you can't put in what you're supposed to put in as an employee, I will find somebody who can. Regardless whether they're sniffling, regardless whether they're running a fever, regardless whether they're sick to the point of almost death. You got some of the raunchiest, hardcore employers out there that could give a damn less whether or not somebody's running a fever, or they got a cold, or they've got a major toothache, or they've got other problems that they're addressing at home. The only thing that these employers care about is slave, 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 push, 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 push. And if their people ain't there to push them, they'll find somebody else that will be available to push. Now that is the real world, Mr. Trump. I hate to tell you. And if it was to ever get like it did over in China, towards having to shut down major corridors, major towns, major cities, if it was to ever reach the level over here like it did over in China, you would have to immediately put out National Guard and declare martial law. Because there would be so much crazy foolishness going on pertaining to rioting and panicking and people hoarding and taking from the shelves. It'd be a nightmare of itself. It almost turned into a civil war. That's one good thing that you can say. If there is a silver lining to communism, that's one silver lining that you can say about communism. Whenever that disease broke out, and they put out the order, like they did over in China, people didn't have to be asked more than likely more than once. You get in the house, and you stay in the house, and if we see you out here on the road, we're going to kill you. If we see you out here on the streets, we're going to mow you down just like a dirty dog. In the extremes of a dire crisis that supposedly they just went through. Once more, I don't put faith in China because they have proven themselves to be manipulative. They have proven themselves to be deceitful. They have proven themselves to be dishonest. They have proven themselves to be undercutters and cutthroaters whenever it comes to business practices. And you got to face the facts. Whenever something like that occurs in a country, naturally they're not going to want to expose their worst. They're not going to want to air their dirty laundry, per se. That's one reason why the state of Oklahoma hasn't come clean on the Oklahoma deal that happened going on 25 years ago. Naturally, nobody wants to own up to something pertaining to gross negligence on the scale of what we've seen happen in 1995 pertaining to the Oklahoma horrible incident that happened. Nobody would want to own up to that. Nobody would. That's the reason why honesty is always the best policy. And if something like that ever occurs, it needs to be fine-tooth combed and investigated on top of investigated on top of investigated. That way you don't have no leading surprises on down the road that turns into a major chaos, kind of like the JFK assassination, towards you have all these theories and all these different conspiracies floating around. That's the reason why the government needs to be more transparent with its people. We understand the reason why a government isn't going to be transparent with all the other 190-something governments or 190-something different nations. We understand the reason why that they want to be discreet about airing their dirty laundry. That's probably to be expected, if the truth be known, looking at it from a global perspective. One nation versus another, one country versus another. Good luck to all of us. You know, I keep saying that again and again and again, and I really mean it. Good luck to all of us, because I know the Bible is fulfilling itself, and what we're seeing is end-time biblical Bible prophecy signs of nervousness, of jitterness, of wars and rumors of wars and pestilences and droughts and famines and earthquakes in diverse places and commotions. I mean, the Bible describes all these things. Christ has already laid it out there to the people. He said to pray that you're worthy to escape these things that are going to befall upon to the planet, or pray that you can endure them, indicating that they will be fallen upon to the planet. Now, I don't have all the answers to give. I don't have all the answers to all the questions pertaining to why that these things are occurring. I mean, the fact of the matter is they had leprosy whenever Jesus was walking upon to the planet. They've had various plagues throughout history. If you know anything about history at all, there's always been human biological contradicting moments with history in various cultures. It says in the Bible that all these are the beginnings of God's sorrows. If you look at it from a supernatural, from a spiritual standpoint. And I'm sure that's exactly what they are.
President, 2 weeks ago, Mr. President, your acting OMB director was in this room and was talking about what he expects to be GDP growth for this coming year. He said it was 3%, and we've talked about the effects of the coronavirus on the supply chain, the declines in the financial markets. Are you still confident that we'll see that kind of economic growth this year?
No, we're going to have tremendously low unemployment. We're setting records in that way. In fact, the administration is, as you know, the lowest average unemployment of any administration in history. And our numbers are very low, very good, 3.5, 3.6. But you can't really see what this does in terms of GDP. It could affect it, but that's irrelevant compared to what we're talking about. We want to make sure it's safe. Safety, number one. But this would have, an impact on GDP. But we're still we're doing great. But this will have, just like, I'll tell you what has a big impact. Boeing has a big impact. How did that happen? A year ago, all of a sudden, that happened. I think that took away a half a point to a point even. You know, it's a massive company. I think Boeing, we had the General Motors strike. That was a big impact on GDP. And, of course, we're paying interest rates. I disagree with the head of the Fed. I'm not happy with what that is, because he's kept interest rates. President Obama didn't have near the numbers, and yet, if you look at what happened, he was paying zero. We're paying interest. Now, it's more conservative, and frankly, people that put their money away are now getting a return on their money as opposed to not getting anything. But I think, we're the greatest of them all. We should be paying the lowest interest rates. And when Germany and other countries are paying negative rates, meaning they're literally getting paid when they put out money. I mean, they borrow money and they get paid when it gets paid back. Who ever heard of this before? It's a first. But we don't do that. So I totally disagree with our Fed. I think our Fed has made a terrible mistake, and it would have made a big difference, as good as we've done, even without the 2,000 points. And we started off at 16,000, and we'll be at 28,000 without. We're going to crack 30,000. We have had increases like nobody's seen before. But we're doing well, but we have to watch We're doing well anyway. In other words, even despite the 2,000 points, it sounds like a lot, and it's a lot, but it's not. It's very little compared to what we've gone up. But we'll be watching it very closely. But we have been hurt by General.
But once more, how many times have we heard even the Speaker of the House give out warnings about the corruption that goes on in Wall Street and how that various people basically just in inside trading or panic or whatever use the system for their own gain. After the pyramid gets so high and so tall and the cream gets so thick, next thing you know, here they come and they'll swipe the cream off the top. That way all the investments with 401k workers has to basically start all over again from ground one. How many times have we seen that occur? Regardless whether it was for this reason, that reason, this reason. You know, what's it going to be next 6 months from now? What's it going to be a year from now? What's going to be the next reason why that they're going to take a dive off on swiping the cream from the top? We see this again and again and again and again, and nobody can control that. It's an uncontrollable animal. While the rich is getting richer, and the working class are taking the brunt of the blow, and the poor is getting poorer. How many times have we continued to see this over whatever reason? Over 9/11, over the problem with 2008 towards the bubble burst, whenever young Bush had to bail everybody out. I mean, how many times have we seen these occurrences happen again and again? And they'll use words like, the system had to rebalance itself, or it was a matter of readjusting. Yeah, we know who readjusted. Those that was sitting back with their eyes like a bunch of hawks, watching it watching the mound get taller and higher and higher and higher. And then all of a sudden, whenever one jumped in, they all jumped in at the same time towards seeing what they could come up with towards taking the cream off from the top. We have seen this again and again and again in regards to the rich getting richer. For whatever excuse. Call it panic, call it greed, call it selfishness, call it good business, consulting, call it whatever you want to call it. But we have seen this again and again and again towards the middle class and the poor class taking the brunt of the blow.
Motors, we've been hurt by Boeing, and we've been hurt, in my opinion, very badly by our own Federal Reserve, who has also created a very strong dollar. That's something nice about a strong dollar, but it makes it much harder to do business outside of this country.
Thank you, sir. A number of your supporters online have embraced these theories or forwarded these theories that the CDC may be exaggerating the threat of coronavirus to hurt you politically. Rush Limbaugh the other day said this has been advanced to weaponize the virus against you.
You don't mean my supporters, you mean my people that are not supporters.
Right, your opponents.
I agree with it. I think, and I'd like it to stop. I think people know that when Chuck Schumer gets upset, and he did the same thing with a couple of trade deals that are phenomenal deals now. Everybody's acknowledged they're phenomenal deals. Before he ever saw the deal, he didn't even know we were going to make a deal. They said, what do you think of the deal with China? I don't like it. I don't like it. He talked about tariffs. I left the tariffs on, 25% on $250 billion. He said he took the tariffs off. He didn't even know the deal. And he was out there knocking it because that's a natural thing to say. But when you're talking about especially something like this, we have to be on the same team. This is too important. We have to be on the same team.
Have you seen evidence that the CDC is trying to hurt you?
No, I don't think the CDC is at all. No, they've been working really well together. No, they really are. They're professional. I think they're beyond that. They want this to go away. They want to do it with as little disruption, and they don't want to lose life. I see the way they're working. This gentleman, these people behind me, and others that are in the other room. They're incredible people. No, I don't see that at all.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. I don't know who said that, but
that was me. Thank you, Mr. President. Tonight, you're minimizing the risk, the danger of the virus. Are you telling the Americans, except for the ones who are sick, not to change any of their behaviors?
No, I think you have to always, I do it a lot anyway, as you probably heard. Wash your hands, stay clean. You don't have to necessarily grab every handrail unless you have to. You do certain things that you do when you have the flu. I mean, view this the same as the flu. When somebody sneezes, I mean, I try and bail out as much as possible with the sneezing. I had a man come up to me a week ago. I hadn't seen him in a long time, and I said, "How you doing?" He said, "Fine, fine." He hugs me, kisses me. I said, "Are you well?" He says, "No." He said, "I have the worst fever and the worst flu," and he's hugging and kissing me. So I said, "Excuse me." I went there, I started washing my hands. So you have to do that. This is, I really think, Doctor, you want to treat this like you treat the flu, right? And, it's going to be. I want to have you, I love you. It was so nice of you to say thank you very much. Go ahead, give me a nice question then. Don't ruin it. Don't ruin it with a bad question. Go ahead.
It's nice to talk to you without the helicopter. I gotta say that. But also, I want to talk to you about 2014. During the Ebola crisis, you said you wanted a quote-unquote full travel ban. You said Obama was a quote-unquote stubborn dope, not for doing it. You said, just stop the flights, dummies. You also said it was a quote-unquote total joke to appoint someone to lead the Ebola response with, quote, zero experience in the medical field. Now you've appointed
They listened to a lot of what I had to say.
I did. So how does that square with what you're doing now?
They listened to a lot, well, because it's a much different problem than Ebola. Ebola, you disintegrated, especially at the beginning. They've made a lot of progress now in Ebola. But with Ebola, we were talking about it before. You disintegrated. You got Ebola. That was it. This one is different, much different. This is a flu. This is like a flu. And this is a much different situation than Ebola. And we're working on Ebola right now, by the way. We're working on certain areas of the Congo. The Congo has Ebola, and caused largely by the fact that they have war and people can't get there. We can now treat Ebola. At that time, it was infectious, and you couldn't treat it. Nobody knew anything about it. Nobody had ever heard of anything like this. So it's a much different situation.
Mortality.
Thank you. So, let me ask you this.
Yeah, go ahead.
In just the course of the last couple of minutes, you have disputed some of what the officials that are working in your administration behind you have said about the risk of coronavirus and its spread. Do you trust your health officials to give you good information, or do you trust your instincts more?
I don't think I have. They've said it could be worse, and I've said it could be worse too. I also think, no, I don't think it's inevitable. I don't think it's inevitable. I think that we're doing a really good job in terms of maintaining borders, in terms of letting people in terms of checking people. And also, that's one of the reasons I'm here today, getting the word out so people they'll know. They're going to know. No, I don't think it's inevitable. I think that there's a chance that it could get worse. There's a chance it could get fairly substantially worse, but nothing's inevitable.
So you're not
Mr. President, Brazil has its first case.
That's right. Brazil.
Right, Brazil.
Yeah.
And you have many Americans now in Brazil for Carnival. What are your concerns, and what are the procedures and practices that you plan to implement as those Americans are trying to come back home?
Yes, we've gotten very strong on people coming in from Brazil. Now, it only has one case. It's a big country, but it only has one case. But still, it's a case. We deal with Brazil very well. The president's a very good friend of mine. In fact, he ran on it's called Make Brazil Great Again. That's what he ran on. We get along very well. I know you're so thrilled to hear that. We get along very, very well. And we're working with Brazil, but we have much worse instances than Brazil. You have Italy and you have other countries where they have much more than one person. They have one person right now, as of just a little while ago, one person in Brazil. But Italy is, a deeper problem. And we're checking people coming in very, very strongly from those. And at some point, we may cut that off. At some point, depending on what happens, we may cut certain additional countries off, like we've had to do with China. And we hope we can open it up to China as soon as possible. And we hope the numbers we've been getting, are true on China, where it really has leveled off and started to go down. Because eventually, sometime, that's going to happen. Go ahead.
Thank you very much.
You've said repeatedly that you think the federal government is very prepared, that you're ready for this.
Yep.
But if you think that Secretary Azar is doing such a great job, why did you feel the need to make a change and put Vice President Mike Pence in charge of the federal response to this virus?
Because, and I think Secretary Azar is doing a fantastic job. But he also has many other things. I mean, we're working on many, many things together. If you look at his schedule of what he's doing, including drug prices, and I think it's perhaps the most complicated job that we have in government. And I want him to be able to focus on that. And Mike is really good at it. They're going to work together. They're going to work very closely together. And they're both in the administration. I see them all the time, so it really works. This isn't a czar. This isn't going out and getting somebody that's never been in the administration. I have two people that are very talented, and it's something I feel good about. I don't want to spare the horses. I have very talented people. I want to use them on this because I want it to stay low or as low as possible.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to get to China. At the beginning of this outbreak, the Chinese Communist Party covered it up. That has been the general consensus of everyone. How can you now legitimately trust President Xi and the Chinese Communist regime, President Xi, and the Chinese Communist regime to be forthcoming and forthright with this pandemic?
Well, I can tell you this. I speak to him. I had a talk with him very recently, and he is working so hard on this problem. He is working so hard, and they're very tough and very smart, and it's a significant group of very talented people that are working. And they're calling up Dr. Fauci. They're calling up our people. We're dealing with them. We're giving them certain advice. We actually have, through World Health, we have them over there also, and we have a lot of our people making up that group that went over there. No, he's working very hard. It'd be very easy for me to say, it doesn't matter what I say, really. I can tell you, he is working. I had a long talk with him the other night. He is working really, really hard. He wants it to go away from China and go away fast, and he wants to get back to business as usual.
Talked about the flu in comparison to the coronavirus. Flu has a fatality ratio of about 0.1%.
Correct.
This has a fatality ratio somewhere between 2 and 3%.
Well, we think. We don't know exactly what it is. And the flu is higher than that. The flu is much higher than that.
There's more people who get the flu, but this is spreading. It's going to spread maybe within communities. That's the expectation. Does that worry you? Because that seems to be what worries the American.
No, because we're ready for it. It is what it is. We're ready for it. We're really prepared. We have, as I said, we have the greatest people in the world. We're very ready for it. We hope it doesn't spread. There's a chance that it won't spread too, and there's a chance that it will. Then it's a question of at what level. So far, we've done a great job. When you have 15 people with this whole world coming into the United States, and the 15 people are either better or close to being better, that's pretty good. All right, we'll do one more. Go ahead.
Mr. President, there have been many cases of price gouging on the sales of medical equipment, masks, and so on. Should the government be investigating that, looking into it, and you have a message on it?
If you tell me that's happening, we will definitely investigate. We don't want that. All right, one more. Go ahead. Sorry.
Mr. President, thank you.
Go ahead. No. Yes? Go ahead.
Are you working with China right now, specifically in what areas? Also,
we're working with China. We just did the biggest trade deal in history. We did two of them between USMCA and the China deal. It's the biggest in history. The relationship with China is a very good one. And I can tell you that, again, President Xi is working really hard. He wants this problem solved as hard as you can work. Thank you all. Thank you all. I'm going to leave you behind and you can answer a few more questions. So you can ask them a few.
Are you going to do this more often?
We've been watching President Trump, their brief reporters on the response to the coronavirus, of course, contradicting his own health officials. He said it was not inevitable. The virus will come here. He also leveled political attacks against Democrats. Of course, the Speaker and the Democratic leader of the Senate. I'm back with Democratic Congresswoman Donna Shalala of Florida, former Republican strategist Steve Schmidt, and Dr. Ezekiel Emanuel, Special Advisor to the Director General of the World Health Organization. So let's look at this from a number of perspectives. The President of the United States besides being a politician and many times simply an entertainer and a partisan, is also chief executive, a role we don't often think about sometimes with him. He's in charge of running the United States government, including the C.D.C. and all the health organizations of the country, and working with international health organizations. He's responsible for protecting the general welfare. That's a job. It has nothing to do with PR. I want to go to Donna Shalala, the former HHS secretary herself under Clinton, and now U.S. Congresswoman from Florida. How is he doing today on those two jobs, leading the government and leading the people?
Well, he's not doing very well on the coronavirus, let me assure you, because the test of leadership is not talking about something you know very little about. And he just confused the American people about whether this virus is going to spread. All the scientists said it is going to spread, and the president gave the opposite impression. And presidents have to know that when they're in a situation like this with complicated science, they put the scientists, physicians in front of them, preferably, by the way, in white coats, and let them reassure the American people, number one, with what they know and what people can do. We just saw a president confuse everyone with his answers.
Let me go to Steve Schmidt on this. A larger question, both questions, chief executive and leader of the country, head of state. Which role is he playing here, well or badly?
Well, I think to the Secretary's point, there's only three types of questions that anyone will ever be asked. There's questions, what do you know? What do you think? What do you feel? This was a news conference that calls for the head of state, the chief executive, to talk about what he knows, not how he feels. We saw a political tour de force talking about how he feels about the coronavirus. You saw him counterpunch very effectively to Speaker Pelosi, to Leader Schumer. But in the end, he understands, looking at the volatility in the stock market, that this is one of the variables, something that's beyond his control in a race that could be determinative to the outcome of an election. And so we saw a president up there often say in politics, hope isn't a strategy. What we saw is a president up there hoping this is the flu, which it doesn't appear to be, according to the world's health experts.
Let's go to Dr. Ezekiel Emanuel on that. Dr. Emanuel, he made a couple comments today. One is that the world is getting over this disease, basically, that the people, even the cases in this country, are recovering. Some are getting back to normal. He also argued it's really not much different than the flu we're used to in terms of mortality rates.
So, actually, I found most of what he said a little incoherent. And, you know, he's a guy who admitted that he's surprised that 25,000 to 69,000 people each year die of the flu. That just tells you how little he actually knows about public health and about the health of the American public. Because every doctor knows that, and lots of health policy experts know that. And he told you, he just revealed how ignorant he is about the situation. We don't know how similar or dissimilar this is to the flu. We know one thing, it actually is more communicable than the flu. It passes between people very, very easily. The current perception is that the chance of dying from it is 2.5% to 3%. Most of us experts think that's too high because the mild cases aren't being reported. So we don't know what the real number is. And that's a really important variable because the real number could be lower or much lower. But then you have to know how many people are likely to get this to know what the total impact on the country is. But his minimizing the fact that this won't spread, it's going to go away. You know, flu won't go away for another 2 months at least. Influenza won't go away for another 2 months at least. If this follows the flu, but that's a big if, and we don't know whether that's going to be true or not. And the president confused it. I thought Tony Fauci was trying to get people's expectations about a vaccine in line. We're not going to have data for another 12 months. There's no vaccine for this season.
So all that we have right now is preventative, right? He said stay in your house. He said wash your hands. Don't touch railings when you walk. Don't make contact with other things as you go through your life. Are those bits of advice of any value in terms of preventing the spread of this disease? Doctor?
Well, first of all, we really do need to improve the number of people who have a flu vaccine. Last year, only 45% of adults got a flu vaccine and under 70% of kids. So that would be a very important measure for people to take. Second, washing our hands and washing our hands thoroughly for 20 seconds. Very important thing for people to take. If you're feeling ill, staying home, not going to work, not infecting other people, very important thing to take for this as well as for the regular flu.
Well, once more, in reality, people don't make like the money that you're making. You're probably making at least, I'm assuming, 80,000. Maybe I'm way off. Maybe you're making 160,000. Well, whenever you're making that kind of money, you know, you can afford to kind of dictate towards where you go and what you do to a certain extent, especially if you're working for an outfit that can have absent time for their employees. You know, not everybody, the employers, has the policy of being able to handle this. So it's going to cause a burden upon to the employees. I mean, the employers, if the employees are all getting sick.
Wearing a mask, that is not helpful, as we have found out. We do need to worry about, do we have enough masks in this country? Are we going to get them to the doctors, not to people sort of playing around? Those are important questions. Are we going to have enough medications? Because the supply chain for medications come through China. That's something people are really beginning to worry about. And there's no evidence that the president or people around him that have been planning this have really taken that seriously. Do we have alternatives? You haven't heard anything about that. So that's part of being a chief executive. I didn't hear any response to any of those major issues.
Well, thank you, Doctor. Hold on there. President Trump directly contradicted, you heard, his own health experts who warned that the spread of disease to this country is inevitable.
I don't think it's inevitable. It probably will. It possibly will. It could be at a very small level or it could be at a larger level. Whatever happens, we're totally prepared. We have the best people in the world.
That's like, I don't think global warming is real. I don't think that there's nothing that we can do about it if it was. Man. I don't know. Maybe this guy's getting up there and trying not to cause panic because he's seen what he's seen with Wall Street in the past 72 hours. Or maybe the guy really is out of touch with reality towards just purely not wanting to accept the experts' advice coming from the medical industry or the science industry. I don't know.
Congressman, let's talk about a normal president. What a normal president, forget party politics for a second, a normal president who's responsible, as opposed to what this president's doing. And from the beginning of this threat, when it came to us through the Chinese and what they're going through, give us a normative, give us a normal, right way to deal with this danger.
The right way to deal with it is to listen to the experts and have a very coherent communication strategy so that the administration speaks with one voice on the facts and what people can do about it, and is very straight with the American people about the spread of the disease. But it has to be a daily report. And so they're just beginning to get organized to give us daily reports. But the president is clearly interfering in this. In addition to that, Congress has a responsibility to make sure that we have adequately funded at least the first step of funding. And we're talking about large numbers. Not only do we have to fund the C.D.C., what the president wanted to cut, but also the FDA, the NIH, as well as the states need to be properly funded because that's the first line of defense. It's community health systems, it's doctors, it's hospitals.
Exactly.
And we have been underfunding the public health infrastructure in this country for a long time.
Years.
We need to rebuild it, and we need to do that immediately.
You know, Steve Schmidt, you and I know politics a bit better than we know anything else, and I was thinking, I thought Dr. Emanuel was right. Wash your hands. I mean, it's good to have, even on a political show like this, to learn some things about protecting yourself. Just stay clean and keep away from, and if you think...
I know for a fact, it's right here locally, there's been at least 2 hospitals within a 30-mile spread that's had to shut down. So what she's talking about as far as hospitalizations being underfunded is in fact correct. The medical industry has been suffering. What was that report that I heard? I forgot now what it was, but it was on your volunteer fire department, pertaining to your ambulances and stuff. Most people, once they become elderly, has to solely depend upon the benefit of aid from ambulances just to be able to get to the hospital. The average hospital trip is about $700 or $800. Medicare won't pay but maybe $150 to $200 on a ambulance trip. Who takes the brunt of the blow on the rest of the $500 per patient per trip? Who takes the brunt of the blow on that? You don't have to be a scientist to figure out that you cannot do that only for a certain length of time before you're going to see major repercussions and complications. You're going to see drastic measures, especially whenever you got so many people of the baby boomers. You got so many people now that's been addicted, or they've been exposed. They've basically been sick with all kinds of different drugs. You got all these other people with AIDS and all these other sicknesses and diseases out there. The problems in the medical communities have went beyond most people's comprehension towards who's paying the bill on all this stuff. It really has. And it's been out of line now for quite some times. And now we're seeing it escalate because of the sicknesses and everything that's going on. So there is a crisis. There was already a crisis before the coronavirus ever got here. There was already a crisis. Now this is just going to add insult to misery towards even making that much more of a crisis.
You got it? Don't spread it. I mean, this is common sense.
To be clean.
But there's a definite lie that was told by the president. I hate the word lie, but he just tried to connect the mishigas of last night's debate, which was pretty horrendous in many moments last night, to what happened the 2 days before. The Democrats are maybe guilty of some things, but they're not time travelers. They didn't have the debate Sunday night. The stock market went down 1,000 a day. Monday and Tuesday, the Democratic debate was Tuesday night. How can even the most crazy Trumpite buy the fact that what happened Tuesday night affected the stock market Monday and Tuesday mornings? How can he make cases like that? Did anybody believe it?
Well, yet they will. And I think it's important to understand politically that he sits atop a propaganda machine that is unlike anything that has ever been seen in this country. Used to be on the campaigns we worked on, you'd have the surrogates out there, and you would hope that the surrogates were able to maintain some message discipline, right? To deliver the talking points, right? To stay with the themes of the campaign. Across this whole country,
it ain't funny.
Normal people,
it ain't
not
funny.
people working on the campaign.
It's not funny, and I'm sorry to my viewers for laughing. It's not funny. It's actually humiliating. It's sad. But this is Donald Trump. This is Donald Trump. I don't know where the end game is with this guy. I really don't, because when you talk about finger pointing, man, he's good at it. I've never in my life.
It's like they have a...
Let's bring this up one more time because it was a good point. It was a very, very clear image of the truth. Listen to what he's got to say.
It's before. The Democrats are maybe guilty of some things, but they're not time travelers. They didn't have the debate Sunday night. The stock market went down 1,000 a day. Monday and Tuesday, the Democratic debate was Tuesday night. How can even the most crazy Trumpite buy the fact that what happened Tuesday night market, Monday and Tuesday? They didn't have the debate Sunday night. The stock market went down 1,000 a day. Monday and Tuesday, the Democratic debate was Tuesday night. How can even the most crazy Tuesday, the Democratic debate was Tuesday night. How can even the most crazy Trumpite, how can even the most crazy Trumpite buy the fact that what happened Tuesday night affected the stock market Monday and Tuesday mornings? How can he make cases like that? Did anybody believe it?
Well, yet they will. And I think it's important to understand politically that he sits at...
Because it's the blind leading the blind, that's why. Just like the Bible talks about, if the blind lead the blind, they're both going to lead off into the abyss.
A propaganda machine that is unlike anything that has ever been seen in this country. Used to be on the campaigns we worked on, you'd have the surrogates out there, and you would hope that the surrogates were able to maintain some message discipline, right? To deliver the talking points, right? To stay with the themes of the campaign. Across this whole country, normal people, not people working on the campaign, it's like they have a chip in their frontal cortex loaded for bear with the Trump talking points that are disseminated from the White House, from Fox News, talk radio.
Okay, you can argue that, and I know that's a psychological.
But Chris, here's the thing. That's the argument he's going to make.
He did it. He just heard it twice.
He's going to make it, right? You watch the debate. And what he's saying is these people are going to destroy the economy. I mean, the chutzpah of it, right, to say that the market's down thousands of points, not because of fear of a global pandemic, but because of the debate. It's incredible, but it's going to be effective.
It's a lie. And Rush Limbaugh was lying. And the president tried to cover for Rush Limbaugh. Now that we're in politics, we have a very firm foundation here. He said that all that Rush did would say that the Democratic big shots like Pelosi and Schumer were spreading their own and hyping into panic. No. Limbaugh said it was the C.D.C. He said it was the experts who were hyping this thing.
For sure. He's going to cover them all the time.
Thank you so much. I guess once you give the guy the Medal of Freedom, you got to cover for him. Anyway, U.S. Congresswoman, and well, Donna Shalala, you've done every job. You're president of the University of Wisconsin. You've done everything great. I'm a big fan of yours, Donna Shalala. You're also a great athlete fanatic, which I love anyway. Dr. Zeke Emanuel, great family. All your brothers are great. Thank you, Steve Schmidt. Coming up, Bernie Sanders gets the front-runner treatment last night. It's not so great to be up there on that pedestal, is it, Bernie? It's really rough up there being a front-runner. He was right in the middle of that debate last night, and they were all going after the front-runner. Here he is.
I'm going to let it lie right there. Let my viewers use their own judgment of what's going on here. There were some real good points that was made, and there was some really bad ones. Good luck to all of us. That's been my ending talk since I have been gifted or blessed of being able to be on my own YouTube platform. Is good luck to all of us. I know that the Bible talks about in the first 4 chapters of Revelations that if society does not repent, that God will throw us off into a sickbed. And if you can't open up your eyes and realize that right now, with the elderly, with all the diseases, not even counting the coronavirus, heart attacks, strokes, emphysema, diabetes, all the shootings and killings, all the abortions, all the people in jails, If you can't understand that we are now presently in a sick bed that is getting sicker by the day, something obviously is wrong with your reasoning. If you can't see with the divorces and the abortions and the AIDS and all the other problems pertaining to cancer, $23 trillion in debt, medical personnel being strained, if you can't see where the world has been thrown off into a sickbed, just like God talks about in the first 4 chapters of Revelations, and that Satan will be loosed. And Satan, well, first of all, Satan's always been loosed. But it says that Satan will rear up in the last days because he knows that he has failed in this battle. And I'm going to say something that ordinarily I don't say to my viewers. But a while ago, while I was documenting Donald Trump, I had an invasion. I had a supernatural figure that come into my presence within about 4 foot of where I'm sitting and talking to you right now. And I had to immediately raise my hand and denounce it and rebuke Satan in the name of Jesus. Why this demonic figure wanted to come to me during me filming and during Donald Trump talking. God still hasn't revealed to me why this demonic figure was bold enough to come within 4 or 5 foot of my arm distance, because not only did I feel it, I seen the glimmer of its negative energy just for a split second, kind of like a shadowing type figure. I seen it just, and I know to the non-believers, I know to the skeptics, I know to the psychiatric communities, I know to the atheist and the agnostic. Whenever I say stuff like this, they're gonna say, "Oh yeah, he's lost it. Oh yeah, this guy here, he's delusional and delirious." I know what they're gonna say, but this is what I gotta say. It's not the first time that I have identified evil, demonic forces that has tried to influence or infiltrate my safety boundaries. A matter of fact, I see them quite frequently through the corner of my eye, because as soon as I turn my eyes towards looking at them, just like that, they're gone. Just like the TV that just got through twinkling, just that quick, they disappear. In other words, as long as I stay focused on not focusing on them in the corner of my eye, I can see them. I can see them witnessing, watching, and looking at me. But as soon as I turn my eyes towards wanting to see them, guess what happens? Boom. They're gone. But they're getting more craftier. And they're getting more courageous towards coming in front of me, to the point that I now can experience, not only by feeling their presence, but seeing their presence. And even Jesus had the ability, again and again and again, recorded throughout the Bible, of "Get this behind me, Satan, for it is written, thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and him only shalt thou worship." Now, was Jesus crazy? Was Jesus psychologically, emotionally, chemically imbalanced? Was Jesus delirious and delusional? Once more, your psychiatric community and your agnostics and your atheists will say, yes, he was delirious, he was delusional. But these are the people that has caused the world to get in the shape that it's in. Why, the Christian society has been trying to warn them and tell them ahead of time. It's getting worse. It's getting worse. We're going in the wrong direction towards peace and utopia. It's getting worse. What's more, what does the Scripture say? It says that if they do not repent, that he will throw thee off into a sick bed. How's he going to throw us off into a sick bed? He'll lift his protected hand off of the presence of the world. And basically the evil, demonic, wicked spirit will have heyday up onto society. And that's just exactly what it's doing right now. The same thing happened during the time whenever the Passover. I mean, this is on the day of Ash Wednesday. Today's Ash Wednesday, which is, going back into the Hebrew religion. But the same thing happened during the time whenever Moses, pertaining to the Passover, whenever the Spirit come over, that if they didn't have blood on their door facing, that the Spirit would come into the house and basically take out the firstborn. Well, that blood that was on the doorpost then is what we have today called the Holy Spirit, that protects us from the intruder. Now, that doesn't mean the intruder won't still try to intrude. The invader will still try to invade. That doesn't mean that he won't still try to invade, because that's his job.
Get to top.
Whenever you're talking about
our Second Amendment and accountability,
when you're talking about an imposter, the prince of this world, and a third of the angels that are no longer considered angels now are considered evil demonic spirits. These imposters are steadily trying to influence God's children. They're trying to trick us. They're trying to dominate us. They're trying to manipulate us. They're trying to deceive us, because they're very deceitful. These imposters are the ones that are entering into people that are causing mass shootings, death untold all over the world. These imposters are the ones that has caused us to be $23 trillion in debt. These imposters are the ones that has caused over 2.3 million incarcerated prisoners, either in jails or in prisons. These imposters are the ones that's actually bringing on this type of disease, regardless whether it be cancer, tuberculosis, diabetes, any other type of either old disease or new disease. These are all occurrences by the imposters. Now, the imposter will try to tell you that the imposters are the Holy Spirit. No, 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 no. That's very incorrect. The imposters are the demonic forces that are trying to manipulate, deceive, and conquer over God and God's children. That's where you have to remain focused. Because if you can't stay focused upon to the truth of the matter towards what's going on, then you will be easily
larger. This is a new virus agent. We have absolutely no way of predicting. So
easily persuaded,
as the CDC talked about yesterday, is to anticipate.
You will be easily persuaded in blaming it on the wrong entity, rather than blaming it on the evil, demonic, dark entity. You'll be blaming it on God. And the whole time it ain't God. It was Satan who polluted or contaminated the Garden of Eden. It was Satan who brought death and despair to humanity. It was Satan, in his trickery, in his manipulation, that caused that much more grief to society. So as my battery is running out, I'm going to let this play out just a little bit longer on what they're talking about right here pertaining to the coronavirus. And once more, good luck to each and every one of us.
This virus, and what are the variables that will determine just how far it spreads?
Well, we've seen some early numbers coming out of China suggesting that it's a pretty highly transmissible virus. So let me give you an example. Seasonal flu has a number assigned to it called a number called the reproductive number 1.3. That means if a single person gets flu, on average, 1.3 other individuals will get it. It's transmissible, but not nearly among the most transmissible agents we know about. For this one, the numbers go as high as 3.58 up to 4. And so that means it's a very highly transmissible virus. We're also hearing different stories about the case fatality rate. Initially, numbers coming out of China said 2%, and others began dismissing that number, saying, well, that doesn't really account for the number of people with low-grade symptoms or have no symptoms at all. But yesterday, Bruce Aylward from the World Health Organization gave us some very concerning news that, yes, indeed, that 2% number case fatality rate looks real. And if that's the case, that's of great concern because, flu, which is a bad illness, and as the president learned about flu today, that it can kill up to 40,000 Americans, 60,000 Americans, a case fatality rate of 2% is 10 to 20 times higher than flu. So I think, it's an art, right, to convey bad news without spreading panic. This is a serious virus infection, and it's going to take all hands on deck to do this. I know the president did the right thing in the sense of trying to find someone to oversee operations, recognizing that this goes beyond the health sector. Look, when we had to combat Ebola, we actually had to send in the 101st Airborne Division. We needed the U.S. military to help us. So he's right to anticipate that we're going to have to go across multiple agencies, possibly including the U.S. military. Whether Vice President Pence is actually going to devote his full time to this, when Ron Klain was doing this during Ebola in the Obama administration, it was 24/7 for him and his staff. And so I don't know how committed the vice president's going to be to really taking this on.
Dr. Peter Hotez, that was extremely informative. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ahead, new data suggesting the Bloomberg campaign may be...
That'll be the end. Thank you. Good luck to all of us. And shalom. Very informative. Wow. 2.5 hours almost. This is going to be a long one.